Hi, John Briggs here again, doing another reaction video. This time I'm going to be looking at Dan Martell's, it's a book summary of Buy Back Your Time. It's titled Build a Business That Runs Itself. Let me just say, I'm a little biased. I like Dan Martell. I like his stuff. But at the same time, I don't agree with everything that he says, just like you're not going to probably agree with everything that I say. But let's get into this and let's see what he has to say.
Stop wasting your time. Successful people don't rely on discipline or willpower to be more productive. These are the 15 principles that they follow to get done even when they don't feel like it.
100% agree with him. Discipline and willpower is not the reason why some people are successful. It's mainly systems and habitual behaviors, whether that's good or bad, that lead to someone's success or lack of success. In fact, one of my favorite books written by Ben Hardy is called Willpower Doesn't Work. Definitely worth the read.
Same principles I use to go from an ADHD mess to a hyper-productive $100 million CEO. So without further explaining it, these are the 15 principles to buy back your time.
So as a fellow author who does not have the success level of Dan Martell yet, what he gave us there is who the book is for. He said, as an ADHD person, how he grew his business. So I feel like that's an important distinction. It doesn't mean that if you don't have ADHD that you're not going to get something from this, because you will. You will see through this video, like, man, solid principles. But it also does let us know if there is something you may not agree with or seems a little off, it just could be because you don't have ADHD and you weren't necessarily the main audience while you're probably a secondary audience of the book.
Starting with chapter 1, how I buy back my life. My friend Stuart had a panic attack at the happiest place on earth at Disneyland. Why? He was working 100-hour weeks. He wasn't taking care of his health. He asked his family if it was okay to miss dinner and not be there in the morning so that he could work on this massive project. And because of that pressure, his body said, screw you. Essentially, he hit his pain line. And most entrepreneurs hit that about 12 employees or $1 million in revenue because it's a point where more growth feels painful.
So before he gets into that, around the $1 million mark, I would say I ran into the same issue. I guess we were actually closer to 2 million with about 25 team members, but I knew that through the growth of our company, we reached this point where I knew that I couldn't be the one who had to make all the decisions. And at that time, I mean, probably to my own fault, it wasn't how I intended to do it, but it just seemed like all decisions were running through me. I hadn't developed a leadership team. And that's really what I needed to do to get me over the hump. And I feel for his friend Spencer. I think that's the name he said, the guy who worked 100-hour weeks. Like, I mean, what he just described, which is on purpose from a marketing standpoint and relating to people. He described a scenario of most business owners. We all feel like we're working 100-hour weeks. We all have been at that point where we probably had to neglect family time in order to get some business stuff done, or we're to the point where it's just such a habit that people accept that we're not going to be around for family time. Definitely a solution I'm passionate about solving, and you're going to find some of the principles in this book align with the principles of my own book. Anyway, so I agree with some of the stuff he's going to share here.
So most people do one of the 3 S's when they hit their pain line. The first S is to sell. It's so painful that they'd rather sell the business, go get a normal job, or do something else because the grass is greener on the other side.
But then I realize selling, most businesses, if you're at that mark and it's painful for you to grow, your company isn't going to be worth a lot to a buyer because you're going to be a critical part of that. And so with you not being part of the picture, revenue most likely is going to drop. That's going to affect your sell price. So I agree with him that that is an option people jump to in those scenarios, but it is a terrible decision because you are not going to get a very good purchase price.
What I've learned is sometimes the grass is greener because it's actually fake. But selling's not an option. Second is sabotage, right? They sabotage themselves by taking on new projects, new product lines, hiring bad people, only to give themselves permission to fall back so that it's not their fault that they're not.
That's an interesting spin on it. I mean, a lot of these big guys who are popular and provide good info, they like to put some sort of framework around it to make it sound like it's their own. And so he's trying to fit in 3 S words here. I don't think I would go so far as to say the sabotage word. They definitely are making those decisions. I think it's lack of direction and just simply not knowing what the way is as to why they have the bad hire or why they do things in a way so that it falls back onto their plate. The intention, I believe, is when they make those decisions, they're hoping that it will lead to less work in the long run and better systems and more freedom. I can understand how it leads to a feeling of sabotage, but I definitely don't believe that it's intentional.
Well, the third one is to stall. Stall means drag their feet on making decisions or stay small, because not growing means slowly dying.
This is a big point I'd like to talk about. So first of all, the stall thing. Yeah, that's decision fatigue, and that's because you're burnt out. It happens to anyone in the burnt out scenario. You delay making decisions because any decision you make will lead to more work on your part, usually, right? That's how I've always seen it. If I make a decision, there are action items that follow that decision. And I have definitely seen people who grow their business to a point, have so much pain over it and frustration, and have reached this point of burnout. They're like, forget it. I'm going to go back to a lifestyle business. How much money can I make just with myself? No team. Managing team is too hard. And so then they purposely stagnate their growth or intentionally decrease the size of their company. All around PTSD, really, over not knowing the right systems, not having good hiring process. There's quite a few things that go into business. But this not growing means slowly dying, 100%. I don't remember where I read this, because I'd like to give credit to it, but it's called the garden box theory, and it's not mine. I remember reading it in a book. Think about a garden box. What happens to that garden box if you leave it alone? It's a piece of land. It's dirt. If I leave it alone and I come back, it will be overgrown with weeds. So leaving it alone actually didn't mean that I returned to a garden box that had nothing in it and it was still just dirt. It led to me having an abundance of weeds. There's this element of life that is just natural atrophy. And so if you leave a garden box alone, weeds grow. If you don't intentionally try to grow, weeds are going to pop up. And so all the healthy stuff that should live in a garden box is slowly going to die. That's why I believe every business owner owes it to themselves to constantly have a goal to continue to grow. Because if you don't, you will eventually start dying, slowly dying, as Dan Martell is explaining here.
Now that you understand what the pain line is, what do you do once you hit it? It's called the buyback loop, and there's 3 simple steps. The first thing is you have to audit your time for things that suck your energy that would cost very little to pay somebody else to do. Second is to
solid strategy, 100%. You have to do that. I recommend, like, if you haven't done this yet, you want to probably take at least a week. I would say maybe 2. The very first time you do it, because as a business owner, we don't have very many days that are identical to other days. So a 2-week time frame as you audit the different tasks that you do, as simple as like, I'm going to write down the things that I'm doing, maybe in 15-minute increments or 30-minute increments, so that then at the end of the 2 weeks, I can go back and look at it and say like, okay, here's some tasks that we can take off my plate. We actually did that with our payroll department, or I should say our accountants, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And we had them list out all the different things they were doing. And we identified that with their skill set and training that allows them to be some of the few people in our company who could handle, say, payroll filing, they were doing a lot of different stuff that admin who didn't require special accounting training could do on their behalf. And from a business standpoint, it would cost the company less to pay someone else to do that who didn't have the specialty training that they had. And we freed up so much money, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. Okay, let's finish his buyback loop here. So first he's saying audit your time, your activities, identify what you can get off your plate, what you can pay a smaller amount for because your time is worth more.
Transfer those things in that bucket to somebody else that loves to do this. There's actually people that play at the things that you consider work. And once you transfer and give them the playbooks, which I'll talk more about in a sec, then they'll be able to take that off your plate to open up your calendar, which brings you to step 3, which is to fill. This is the thing that brings you the most joy, the most energy, and makes you the most money, which I'll double click on when we get to the drip matrix.
So on that, the fill part, a mistake that I see business owners make is that they audit, they transfer, so someone else is now doing that work. But because they're kind of in this state of burnout, they use that freed up time to do nothing related to the business. Now, the goal is to reach a point in your entrepreneurial life where you can use the extra money to just free up your personal time. That's awesome. I'm confident Dan Martell lives a glorious life right now, and he has complete time freedom. But in the early days, chances are when he freed up time, he literally freed it up, as he said, then to fill it with higher value activities. You have to do that in the beginning, especially if you're in a state of burnout. You need to use your freed up time to then fix the other things that are contributing to this feeling of burnout. Without that step, you have literally just traded money for more personal time, which again, isn't a bad thing if you're in that stage of your business. But most small business owners that we have done the consulting with aren't in that state immediately. It does take some time and additional steps to get there. So critical part of his buyback loop, you gotta fill the time with higher level activities at the beginning. Don't just use the time and, go on the beach to drink root beer. Use it to do business value activities.
Which brings us to chapter 2, the drip matrix. I believe in life, there are 2 categories of things that you do. There's things that feel like math class for me, which is boring and I hated it. And it felt like every second just went super.
I love math class, by the way, but I get it.
Freaking slow. Or there's art class, where when I was in art class, what I felt was 5 minutes was more like an hour.
Struggled in art class. So he and I are a little bit opposite there, but I understand the concepts he's talking about here.
Clock goes off and all of a sudden I'm done. It's like time flew by, and life can be that way. Not all tasks are created the same. The way you look at your work will dictate how long it feels. And I'm always looking to.
Yeah, not just work, but also clients. I mean, we had some clients, and he'll probably get into this maybe, and if not, we do believe in grading clients, and the better clients deserve better service. I remember having some clients where it's like, man, once I actually looked at it, I wasn't spending a ton of time on them, but for some reason, when they called in or had requests, it just drained my energy because there was something else going on in the relationship that made it not the right fit for them and for me.
Always looking to invest it, not just to spend it. So that's why I created the drip matrix, which is a very simple X and Y axis of things that light you up, that give you energy, to things that make you money, that produce.
Okay. I mean, I understand this principle. Obviously, I cut him off and we'll keep watching what he's saying here, but the more time you can spend on things that light you up, the better. Depending on your stage in business, though, you are going to have activities you do that just plain old suck. And if a mistake was made, it's so critical and it could be so costly that that task still needs to live with you. I want to provide the best working environment for my team members, but sometimes based on your position, you're going to have to do some really crappy tasks that just no one likes. And, maybe I could find the few people in the world who actually like it. Like maybe there's a handful of people who really do enjoy working at baggage claim for an airport. Yeah, I want to deal with people who are always upset that the reason they're coming to me already means they're upset. Maybe there's some people like that. Most people aren't. In small business, we're going to have scenarios like that where there's just certain tasks you got to get done. You're going to have to stay on your plate. It's going to have to stay on your plate. So I understand what he's doing here. We'll finish out his matrix here, but I just wanted to add that caveat. I don't think it's possible until you reach a very specific stage, which involves having a lot of that income and a lot of different freedoms, not just time freedom, but financial freedom, energy freedom, things like that, which Dan is at based on at least what I've read from about him and the different exits that he's had and his success there, that he can choose to only do things that light him up. Many of our small business clients, especially those under $1 million, don't have that luxury quite yet. It's a great goal to work towards. And if you filter your tasks in the way of like, maybe using this matrix, we'll see how he does it, but like things that light me up, or maybe reverse order, things that I hate the most, I still have to do, getting rid of those first, but they stay on your list until you can actually get rid of them and have someone competent enough to do it. Anyway, well, let's see what else he says about this.
Most income in your life, and you got to move from the bottom left quadrant all the way to the top right. So in the bottom left is D for delegate. What are the things that when you look at your to-do list, you should just delete it or defer doing it this week, this month, or give it to somebody else that can do it and just learn how to delegate?
Yeah, that's a good point on that. There's going to be some tasks that you're doing that you've done just because that's the way it's been done. But if you stop and think about it, does it really need to happen? We actually just went over our tax organizer for our tax firm because as a filming of this, we're coming up on prepping for tax season. And we have a question on the tax organizer that really internally we should be able to answer. But we put it on there because years ago, we created a relationship with a sales organization that wasn't quite saying things the way they needed to. And so we had clients coming in with false expectations. And so that question helped us figure out if we're really on the same page. Well, we have fixed a lot of processes with that sales organization, so that doesn't happen very much anymore. So we realized like, oh man, we just need to delete that. It doesn't need to exist anymore because it solves a problem that doesn't exist anymore. You're doing some tasks that probably fit that bill. So we've been talking about looking at your task and delegating them to people for less money than what you cost. But let's not forget that great point that Dan Martell makes is you're doing some stuff that just needs to be deleted. No one needs to do it. It's not adding value to anybody.
Then you move up to the R, which is replacement. That quadrant is all about looking at the key people you need to hire on your team and build that team of people that can replace you from having to do the work. And that's why I teach the replacement ladder, which we'll get into in a second. But understanding the right sequence to do that will equal success.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you haven't seen my video on the 10X org chart, I kind of talk about that there, but that's how we determined what positions can replace me out of certain things. Because in this case, the focus was, as the business owner, I want to make sure that my time is dedicated to the highest value things because that actually helps the business grow the fastest. And so if I took those tasks that I wrote down and tracked for 2 weeks, for example, I'd likely be able to identify a category, categorizing them into different categories. That's a terrible way to say that, sorry. But you know what I'm saying, putting them into categories will help me determine, oh, that's an entire job that one person could do because those tasks are related. And then just straight up replacing me as opposed to taking one task and asking different team members to take specific tasks. Both work, but as you're continuing to grow, that will involve more team members, and having team members' jobs focused, like normal businesses under a certain job title is usually a lot more useful. The few times we've tried the Swiss Army knife approach, it becomes very confusing for the team member.
Quadrant on the bottom is investment. Once I've got time back, then I got to invest in developing the skills, the relationships, the mindset to become a better person for my team so I could grow. And then the top right is all about production. This is where you want to do the work that gives you energy, that lights you up, that truthfully you would do for free, that makes you the most money. And if you don't know what that is.
Yeah, so he is kind of saying what I was talking about just in a different way when I was referring to stages of entrepreneurship. If you go through that drip cycle as he explained it, hopefully you end up with just the tasks at the top that give you the most passion because you've been able to delegate, delete, he said defer. Not sure how, if the task is necessary, you really shouldn't defer it. But then moving up to hiring full-on humans, whole humans to replace specific tasks, investing more in the team so they can then do more, ending up with the ultimate goal of you get to just spend time on things that light you up the most. You're going to make a lot of progress in your business if you follow that as your through line as far as like what my focus is. So it's good.